Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you're joining us from around the world. Welcome to Web3 Warriors. I'm David Krome, your host. Go by Krome in the metaverse. Thanks for joining us. And this is Web3 Warriors episode 28, featuring Kimani from LMO Productions. Welcome, Kimani. How you doing this morning?
I am fantastic. How are you, David?
Doing good, doing good. Thanks for joining us, man. I'm really looking forward to our talk. So today on episode 28, our topic of the episode is filming in Web3. You know, how does the blockchain, how does Web3 potentially impact the film industry, the production of films, the fundraising of films, the creation, and even at the community level, the potential to build, even from scratch, really, a film out with the intention, and it can all start from a really successful NFT project, really, in theory. And we've seen some concepts out there, whether, some of the bigger brands like Bored Apes trying to do spin-off comics or different types of video, but they're looking more in the gaming space, I think. But when looking at film and thinking about, how can tokenizing or creating a community with NFTs lend itself to kind of building out a Hollywood film? What's the next Marvel? What's the next amazing kind of Universal Studios or something that is really groundbreaking to come out of this space? And I don't think it's a huge conversation that's happened. The first person I ever heard talk about it was definitely Kimani, so that's why I'm happy to have him here on the show with us. Early last year, he's been talking about this tokenized film production studios and how it works, and there's a lot of layers to it. Anybody who has a little bit of experience in the film production world knows all of the many pieces and parts that go into it, the many labor sensitivities that come into play, and of course, a lot of the influence and the over influence that certain producers and certain people in the space tend to have, So you have the opportunity here, in theory, with the blockchain to kind of decentralize, of course, and break down that monopoly by, inviting communities in to actually invest in specific projects. You can have your whole kind of project team ready and have something to pitch, show a roadmap. And then, if you get the right attraction, you get the right community backing you, there's really no limits to what you could do from that kind of initial seed, an NFT collection and a project. So with that in mind, we have a good expert here who spent many, many hours looking at this concept and has really ironed out a really cool project for himself and for their team at LMO Productions. And so we won't go too far into it because I am not an expert personally on film production at all, but I do think in concept I can see how it does have the opportunity for sure to really decentralize the film industry and to allow communities to really take initiative and have some ownership and have some say in the way that certain projects are built. And when looking at TV shows, season to season, it allows for some pretty maybe interesting two-way, innovative, community-based approach to how you grow a TV show. So with that in mind, and without getting any spoilers or getting ahead of what Kimani might share with us today, I do want to thank you, Kimani, again for joining. And before maybe we get into Let Me Out Productions and the many kind of granular details that are very important when looking at something like this, what brought you to the blockchain, first of all, and then to this concept as an idea? But welcome, Kimani.
Goodness, thank you so much, David. Everybody watching and everybody watching the record, how amazing is David as a host? You're a prolific, amazing, wonderful content producer, and you've been doing it since day one in this space, man. It's like I celebrate you. Everybody, give David his flowers.
Oh, thank you,
I
Kimani. I appreciate you.
back in the early days, I laid out like this. I didn't come into NFTs for anything complicated. I was late 2020 and I was broke just like everybody else, no income. And there's no way to pay the bills. There was some family turmoil going on. My brother was missing, and December 2020, I decided. So somebody on Twitter, one of my Twitter followers, like, "Hey, you ought to check out this NFT thing and see what that's like." And I've been a photojournalist. I have to make sure to say it that way. A photojournalist that covers professional sports for the past decade, shooting pro basketball here in Sacramento. And I always worked for my rights instead of for a paycheck. So that's good now, but bad when I was living through it. Um, and so December 2020, I have all the rights to my, thousands and thousands and thousands of photos I have over my career. And I'm saying, okay, well, let me see if I can monetize these by defining them as non-commercial assets with this technology, this non-fungible token technology. That's the whole that's the idea is I was exploring it. It took me a while to wrap my head around it. But I'm basically giving my photography, each photo, a serial number on a permanently public registration. That's that's well. Let me not simplify it too much. But
It's not a simple thing. It's not that simple.
it's not that simple. But I'm essentially sticking a I'm attaching a serial number that everybody knows where to find this serial number on a public ledger to this photo, and that's how I'm transacting the photo. And then I can also define how an audience member is going to interact with that photo. So I have to make sure that these photos are non-commercial assets, and I'm able to do that using this technology. That brought me into but I didn't even figure that out until February. So I was 3 months into it. And so if you're out there and you're out there trying to figure it out, and you're like, what's going on with blockchain? What's going on with NFTs? And you don't get it, that was me.
That
That
was
was
all of
me.
us at one point.
It was dense and hard and like swimming through concrete, but you'll get there. So just
So
hang in there.
it would have been late 2020. You're saying then you kind of came
That's when I started doing research, but I didn't I was just Googling stuff. Well, I don't use Google, but you know what I mean.
yeah, doing the research, doing your own
Yeah, just doing
research,
the research. Uh,
DYOR.
at the time, I was gearing up to transit. I was going to retire from my sports media career and go to grad school in September of 2021. And then when I actually figured out what this technology was and where we were in history with it, I said that can wait.
That's
I
what's
can
up.
do that any old time. The chapter we're in right now, which it's still open. That's what's bizarre. The door's still wide
Yeah, I
open.
mean, people are misunderstanding. I think the gravity of the technology and looking more so on the crypto. So you were saying you're definitely more of the like NFTs kind of pulled you in with the metaverse and like the whole concept of what they're building in the NFT land, and not really so much the crypto. You would say like it
Yeah,
wasn't like a scenario
it.
where you were familiar with crypto ahead of time and then you were like, oh, this sounds interesting.
I always understood the value of crypto against the US dollar because I remember doing research on this back in 2018. Um, and I was trying to figure out how many US dollars there were in circulation in the world, and I just couldn't find a solid number.
Hmm.
There's a bunch of different sources that ranged from 19 trillion to 80 trillion. And these are official bodies. CIA, World Economic Forum, Federal Reserve. I said, okay, that's a pretty wild spectrum. So
That
you
is
guys have no
pretty.
idea, zero idea how many dollars there are. So who decides the value of the dollar? And that's when I started trying to understand the value of currency, and that brought me to finally understanding how Bitcoin works, where there's only 21 million of them,
Hmm.
and each one's harder to access. So the value of that currency is decided by the community that's using it, and then same thing with every cryptocurrency. So I already understood that part of it 3 years ago at this point, or yeah, 2 years at the yeah, about three, yeah, 2.5, 3 years, and then something fantastic happened, and you remember this mid February, maybe a little later. A artist named Beeple sold a $69 million piece at auction at a Christie's auction to a platform called Metapurse out of Singapore. And a few years ago, 2018, I was on The Bachelor, and that was a huge show. And
You were working
the,
production, you mean? You weren't the
yeah,
bachelor
yeah,
himself,
worked
right?
at TV production. Yeah, yeah, it was a huge show. But the one thing I took away from working that show is the scale of these things is achievable. It's doable because that's what I was doing is just running the numbers and organizing people. And I said, well, and that's what I've been doing most of my career anyway.
Mm.
Scaled from 5 million to 25 million. And I've never gotten paid well to do it. Like, okay, well, I can do this around any intellectual property at this point. If you put me down in front of it, I can figure out exactly what it needs to be done at scale and at a high quality. So why am I doing that for $250 a day? Why am I doing that for 300 a day? You know? And
That's
then
like,
you also have to then there's the lean months where you don't have any gigs coming in. This industry's tough. So, uh, by the time I saw when I saw that $69 million piece sell, I wasn't thinking art. I wasn't thinking transacting art. I was thinking transacting basically artistic communities because that's what a production is. Um, a team of people. I mean, we're all hired to be there, sure, but we're all
Mm,
also there to produce an artistic goal and to tell a story. Each and every one of us, from the person whose idea it was to the assistant who's working a couple of days on the thing.
mm.
Every single person is important to the outcome. So I saw that $69 million piece sell, and I'm thinking that's 3 seasons of a good show. It just,
Yeah,
that just went to one person.
that's true. But people put a lot of hours and days into those.
He
How
did.
many
He did.
every days did he do to get that 69 mil, right?
13 years,
Yeah,
every single day,
exactly.
it is represented by an art piece in that piece,
Right.
which is,
It is mind
you know,
blowing when you think about it. So when looking at, Let Me Out Productions, and now you've been grinding on it for about a year, right? Let's jump into a little bit more of the details then. So
year
inspired
and a
by
half.
people, inspired by like obviously seeing the community angle of the NFT space, but also the lucrative potential on the blockchain and being able to maybe break free of some of those industry shackles that are in the film industry. How did you think of Let Me Out Productions, and did it exist prior to NFTs, or is it something that has been built specifically for the blockchain?
This existed since 2007.
Okay.
Before 2007, I was producing under something called Brothers Cup Productions for a couple years there, 2005 through 2007,
Mhm.
and then I came up with Let Me Out Productions in 2007, and that was because my buddies and I were trying to be filmmakers out of our little small town in Forest Hill, California, and when you're from a small town in America or anywhere in the
But
world
you're in
and want
California, so you got an edge.
kinda, I mean, we're really, I mean, it's
Yeah.
like, it's just as far away from LA as
Okay.
Phoenix,
I got you.
so it's there's still barriers of entry to the industry. There's not a lot going around up there.
Hmm.
We had that movie Phenomenon with John Travolta come up to the town next to us, and it was a big deal.
Nice, nice. Yeah, we actually get quite
So
a few films up here in Canada. Apparently, we give some good tax breaks in the province I'm at in Manitoba. We get some famous people every once in a while. We'll see it in our newspapers. Like, John Travolta's in
I
town. Like, oh, cool.
I believe in the Game of Thrones method. I don't think you necessarily need the famous people. I think you make them. But
There
anyway,
you go. That's the way to go. I
yeah,
like that.
yeah,
Yeah, Game of
because
Thrones did do that well, didn't they? Never thought of
yeah, well,
that.
there's so many shows to do. The Expanse is another one, right? Like,
Mm,
I'll go to my grave saying The Expanse is one of the best shows on television of all time. But
nice, nice. Yeah, that's something to be
yeah,
said. I like that.
it was a good novels, good television content.
Cool,
Just like
cool.
Thrones, it veers off from the novels. But
So
yeah,
you've been picking up production work under Let Me Out Productions here and there since 2007. So what led you to this kind of concept besides people, besides the buzz and the energy and the space, but from a kind of nuts and bolts community perspective, or even just like real production team perspective, why do it this way, and how has Let Me Out Productions kind of changed since you brought things to the blockchain?
the first 5 years we were just getting started. So there's a lot of short films, working support on other people's films, doing stuff for no money. For very little money. That was also the film school years, but I also was able to get a lot of experience under my belt, and when I think back on it, it's fantastic. But anyway, I had 5 years of commercials in New York, short films all over the place, um, music videos, stuff like that. And then 2012 to 2013, I moved to LA. I tried dip my foot in that soup, and I was producing the news down there, which I valued highly, but I did not go well for me, and that turned out very poorly in LA. And March of 2013, I get a call to come inviting me to come assistant direct on this documentary about keeping the basketball team here in town in Sacramento.
Mm,
And then that transitioned. We didn't end up needing to make that, so that transitioned into my photojournalist career, um, producing post game shows and shooting high level photography. And then so that would be my winter job, as I would call it, about you know uh, maybe 50 to 90 days out of the year. And then the rest of the time, I'm working with the production things that come up through Sacramento with Let Me Out as a support unit. And you'd be surprised at some of the shows that come through, but it's a lot of house hunters it's a lot of what I call rich people's backyard shows.
Mm.
Um, Lots of seminars. So
House
you
hunters.
pay
That's
the
good.
you pay the bills
Mm.
and you string things along, and the entire time I've seen a huge potential for what this city could be for the film industry as a whole. There's a lot of on location possibility that is achievable in Sacramento with low environmental impact
Mm.
because you can host everything out of the city of Sacramento and then do remote shoots and do the travel in a day where it's on, any location you could. Anyway, I won't go tangential on you. So I've always that brought me the sports media career brought me to 2020 where the pandemic shut everybody down. And I'm not alone in this, but I wasn't allowed to work and not allowed to perform in my craft and earn a living.
Right.
And so I was driven to try to find a new economic means, which brought me to the blockchain and NFTs. 3 months into that, the Beeple thing sells. My head immediately goes towards production budgets and film finance and that sort of thing. I reach out to Metapurse, and had they not been so gracious as to email me back, I don't know if I'd be sitting across from you right now
Wow.
because those little sparks of belief go a
Yeah, the
long way.
fact that you took the initiative and reached right out to the people who bought the Beeple piece, that's awesome. So what did they say?
Everybody in Web3 knows I'll send you an email.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt.
Everybody in Hollywood knows that too. Kimani will send you an email for sure. And he'll
So
also talk about himself in the third person when he's trying to be a
there you
douchebag on
go.
purpose.
That's good stuff, man. So what did they say? What was the feedback?
Oh, I said I wanted to put together what they did was very interesting. That's what spurred all my thoughts. They bought the Beeple piece, they fractionalized their ownership to the Beeple piece, and they created a blockchain a token called the B20 token. And they said part of it is that they're in Singapore, but they successfully did all of this without creating any securities.
Wow.
And I found that so fascinating. I said, hey, I want to take that to the film industry where we can fractionalize our ownership over the things that were well stated ambitions for film shows, metaverse experiences, augmented reality things, really any sort of art, anything an artistic community can produce.
Mhm.
As long as you form a document that has well-stated ambitions. You can fractionalize your ownership to those well-stated ambitions and assign the ownership to these serial numbers on the blockchain. And it was fascinating. Metapurse, to their credit, gave us 3 months of development, and that was amazing. And then they ended up saying no on June 22nd at 10 in the morning. Tough morning.
Damn.
So that was, but that was so that ballooned from late February, getting that starting that conversation. I had a show that I've been working on for 6 years,
Mhm.
called Press Pass. Now, 6 years ago, the team I covered wasn't very good, and I knew they weren't going to get much better anytime soon. And even at that point in my career, had I covered any other team, I would have shot a playoff game, which I thought was hilarious. A lot of people, when we're in these little corners of our careers, especially in the media circuit, where we live in the fallacy of comparison, we tend to devalue our presence because of what we're doing. It's like, no, we're all telling stories.
Right.
I don't place a value on anybody over the next when it
Yeah.
comes to that ever. Ever. There's no point. You miss out on the greatest storytellers that way. So that's basically the point of Press Pass, is to celebrate what it's like to be in the environment of sports media around the worst possible team you could cover. And then watching every year as all your career hopes and dreams that are placed on this team get mailed into the ocean. They're going to win 20 games. So I think it's a message that speaks to a lot of us in the media, in all of our media walks, is that what we do is we tell stories. And some of us might have small audiences, some of us might have huge audiences. Those of us with small audiences, I always say the best way to think about it is put all your viewers in a room with you, and then it's a lot of viewers. Then those 300 views turn into a lot of people.
Right.
That's a sold out theater.
Yeah. That's a nice way to
So
think about it.
yeah,
These
it's got
people with
it's
their
got a way to
metrics
think.
obsessions, and if you don't have thousands and
Yeah,
thousands of people, then you're not as,
yeah, I say that,
worthy.
and our project has not sold out or cascaded. The only aspect of the project that could cascade is the show press pass. But yeah, so early March, I put together the writers' room. We had our first meeting. The first recorded meeting was March 27th on Zoom. We had the first prelim meeting on March 13th. And by the end of March, I had over 30 attachments on season one of Press Pass, and a lot of these were industry professionals that just like me and believe that I'd be a great showrunner,
Nice.
knowing nothing about NFTs.
Right.
April comes, a tragedy strikes. April 10th, my brother passes away.
Oh, sorry to
I
hear
did
that.
not know at the time. I didn't know for 3 weeks.
Mm.
So we kept working through the writers' room. We kept on meeting the benchmarks that were laid out to us. And I'm sitting there not knowing my brother passed. Now, energetically, I knew, but
Mm.
like in retrospect, you think about the how you felt at the time and all
Right.
that. And then by the time May rolls around, early May, I find out, and then my spirit just, we're building a comedy world.
Yeah.
My spirit just crushed.
Not in the right space.
Yeah, I'm not. You can't show up and tell jokes.
Mm-hmm.
So I lean on the writers' room pretty heavy, and what we did, because I don't have any money to
Mm.
this date, don't have any money. We haven't sold very many NFTs. What we did was we signed all the writers to aleatory agreements. So at conditional points, meaning that once we achieve certain value points in our raise, that's when they would get their back pay would get triggered, and then their contract would pick up from there.
Right.
So that's the way that we arranged that, and they were all okay with that. And to their credit, these wonderful writers showed up for 3 months, on that situation.
Mm-hmm.
And we thought we had something really good with MetaPurse. I made a couple of personnel errors. I named two co-founders to LMO Productions that did not believe in the technology and did not show up.
Mm.
And I didn't pivot away from that. I thought I always tell that my lesson on that is don't waste time trying to convince people. They let you know what they think right away,
Right.
and
And don't maybe
that's
force them into a technology they don't care about or understand, I guess.
yeah. Well, I was over here saying, these guys are people I care about, and I don't want them to miss the opportunity,
Right.
right?
Right.
And so I figured I'd get most of the work done without them. And when you're across from a $2 billion platform like MetaPurse,
Mm-hmm.
they notice that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's not a good look. You have to have the whole team showing up. You can't have somebody busting ass and thinking I'm going to do it and then have these guys come in.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great
Uh,
learning lesson for our listeners as far as the value of, yeah, we want to help our friends and all that kind of thing or work with the teams we have. But in this Web3 space and this blockchain space, when you're building out, you have to have 110% certainty from the team you're building with, right? That they understand the tech and they understand why you're taking this angle, because it's not necessarily the easier angle, especially in the short term, right? At the front end, it's not as easy. It's a pretty heavy lift to get so many people aligned on a single roadmap and vision, and then to invest financially on the blockchain, right? So you do need a team that is fully aligned with why you're doing it that way, and able to pull it off, or at least able to help on a consistent basis. So that's a great
yeah.
point there, Kimani.
Yeah, and that's the other aspect too, is that I've been at the other end of that, right? I've been the person showing up for free for every single stop in my
Mm.
career. That's the only way I've gotten the opportunities that I've gotten, and that's wrong. That's wrong. That I have to show up for free for years to get an opportunity that somebody else can walk into.
Mm.
So that's wrong. I would like to see that end, and I don't want to contribute to that at Let Me On Productions. So what I did was once the writers' room already was like middle of May, we're shutting this down. We're focusing on the pilot. We'll stack up a few months of back pay for y'all, but then we're middle of May, we'll shut it down and put everything on hold so I can now we have a pilot to go get funding around. Um, the I delegated the script authorship to another writer in the room, and if you're in showbiz, that's another caution of mine as showrunner: don't do that, especially in this space, especially in an aleatory writers room, conditional, when people are conditional on benchmarks. We had to have that script in by May 15th, and it was 4 days late. So
Mm.
between the personnel calls at the founder level and the script coming in 4 days late, $2 billion platform,
Yeah.
I'm surprised they gave us another month of
Right.
discussion. So Um, we were very lucky at that point. That when I sent the pilot in was May 19th. It was the day after I had officially retired from sports media, and it was also we had filmed the clip for that token art that day as well. So it's a historical day. It's also it was real soon after after I learned my brother had passed,
Mm.
probably within a few weeks. So I was pretty busted up over that. I'm surprised we got anything done. So that's March. March we was the official let me out pivot, and it's on the chain. What I did with MetaPurse was I took the fractional ownership paradigm and I applied it to the film industry, and I wrote a paper on it called the LMO Structure for Tokenomics. I should have called it LMO Structure for Open Access Tokenomics, something like that.
Mm.
But I didn't have the market contrast to understand that maybe that would have been a better title, and then I can always update the title at any time.
Yeah.
The
Why do you think that? Why do you think the title's so important?
open access,
Mm.
because there's so many walled gardens popping up in the film space in Web3 now. And a
Mm.
walled garden is apply to us, give us all your information, give us your ideas,
Yeah.
and once you have our approval, we might be able to do something for you.
Mm. And do you see that even happening in the tokenized space? Like, as
Yeah,
some
it's happening
communities are
right now.
really, yeah, like there's still gatekeepers, even though they're saying they want to do blockchain, they want to build out maybe even a DAO. The way that you apply, the amount of money you have to pay to get yourself in the door, and then the actual activity that's happening after you're in are all, somewhat questionable. And it does seem like a little bit of just certain influential people creating this space and acting like they have some grandiose plan, but often A, it costs too much, or it's cost prohibitive, or B, they're just very selective, or C, it's all just BS, and they're acting like they're going to do some big project and they end up doing nothing.
It's bizarre, right?
Yeah.
There's a basketball player out here in Sacramento who did an NFT project, and it completely flopped because he wasn't coming through on the obligations that he promised his token holders. And I know this guy.
Right.
I'm like, dude, what the obligations you promised were not that complicated. Could have been carried out in a week. 'Cause a lot of it
Wow.
was just like buying jerseys and stuff.
Right.
And it's like you just need a project manager that knows how this technology works and knows how to facilitate these obligations. And that's not what's happening in this space. So, and then the other thing is that the obligations are not well defined. And
Mm.
I call that ahead of time. You know what I'm saying,
Yeah.
man?
Yeah.
That's what's bizarre about my paper is like,
And earlier you were talking about well stated ambitions, and the idea of the importance. I don't know if that's an actual legal term, but I do know when looking at trying to avoid being a security under the American SEC regulations, and when looking at even just the way you pitch your project, to your point, those well stated ambitions are very important, and how clear they are and how much they're not necessarily promising some big monetary payout or anything like that, right? Yeah, maybe speak to that more directly, like how does that differ, LMO versus maybe some other similar projects that you've seen out there?
super excited about what the LMO structure for tokenomics does and is. So the very simple breakdown is we took a different approach to fractional ownership than what MetaPurse did with the B20 token, because we decided even if somebody did want to enforce that with a smart contract, there still needs to be a general term sheet that you're presenting to collectors. And when you think about it, what's the best thing you can offer to any consumer, especially when it comes to an endeavor that you're asking them for support for an outcome, ownership in that outcome?
Yeah.
So that's the best chip that we can offer. That's the number one thing I think consumers would be interested in, is even on a ceremonial level, being a part owner of something. So that was the paradigm I went into it with. The Elmo structure is a very simple breakdown. It depends on where you're locally at if you wanted to use it on a platform level, but using a legal wrapper of a deed, I want to be clear that neither David or myself are offering legal advice or financial advice.
Definitely not.
Gotta be clear every time we're talking about legal wrappers and
Right.
documents and stuff. But he said, well stated ambitions. I come from a background of, I come from a background of foster care, and my foster dad is a civil engineer. So I grew up in a home where he was constantly discussing deed law and property transactions and stuff. And we also, in Forest Hill, which is an old West town, a lot of that stuff is still, you'd be surprised at how young a lot of it is. Basically, long story short, a deed is what you use to claim an immovable property. And early in the process, I was asking my various legal experts that are in my circle and around the project, is intellectual property immovable? And I started describing precedents that I found in my research and then also my thoughts on it. And I'd be curious as to your audience thoughts on it.
Hmm.
Is intellectual property immovable? My point is that yes, it is immovable because when you talk about, let's just use Marvel for example, right? Just a very loose. But Stan Lee is the point of origin for a lot of that material.
Right.
And we all know it. And anybody can step in and tell a story from that world, but the point of origin is immovable. It's Stan Lee. Everybody knows it.
Right.
And so now we have a paradigm we're all enjoying of intellectual property is immovable. Enter blockchain technology, and you're staking. We're all in the old west now. We're staking our intellectual property. Go put the four corners down on the plot of land. And the only way to do that is to describe it as thoroughly as possible. And the best way to do that is to use a deed
For sure.
and and register that deed just like you're registering it with the county back in the old days.
That makes
And
sense.
so my my I've been I've been in the industry for 15 years, seen a lot of shenanigans. I've never been on the blockbusters myself, even though please give me an X-Men film, just one.
One day,
But
one day.
yeah, one day, right? Uh, I have seen a lot of shenanigans in this industry. We're seeing them all the time. You saw it with Quentin Tarantino earlier in 2021, and you're seeing it with Sly Stone right now.
Hmm.
Where creators don't own their intellectual property in this industry. So I'm trying to establish a whole new industry infrastructure, which I know is ambitious, it's disruptive, but it's sustainable and benefits everybody, including the legacy folks.
Did you
What
want to
we're gonna
touch briefly on the Sly Stone comparison though? I'm just curious. I think I had heard about the Quentin Tarantino one. Where,
Tarantino doesn't own Pulp Fiction, right? His
ah,
movie that he created and wrote, and
mm,
from his own, he doesn't own it.
right,
Miramax owns it, but
gotcha.
Tarantino does retain some rights within that contract. 39-page contract, fascinating. I read every page,
Nice.
and he retained the right to produce interactive media.
Hmm.
So, which I thought was like this is such 90s language,
Yeah, that's
but
fascinating though. That's an awesome caveat for himself.
super cat, right? So
Yeah.
that's where the argument is with Tarantino.
Hmm.
He wanted to release non-fungible tokens that contained extra elements from the Pulp Fiction world, scripts, I think maybe some footage that had not been seen before, things like that. Just stuff that hadn't been seen before. And Miramax is like, no, that's our property. You can't sell that property online as digital assets. And Tarantino's like, well, I reserve. It says here that I have the right to produce interactive media.
There you go. Sounds fair to me. I mean, I would consider NFTs, depending on what exactly you're pitching, but it could definitely classify as interactive media.
That's something I don't know if that's been resolved yet, if it was settled.
That's interesting. Thanks for bringing that up. I hadn't heard the details of that. I feel like I heard rumblings of it, but I didn't actually look under the hood and find out what it was.
That one doesn't end up in court. Something like that's going to end up in court one day, and
No
the
doubt.
outcome of that is going to have huge implications
Big legal
for
precedent, right?
all property. Say what?
It's a big legal precedent, right?
Big legal precedent, and then also it can determine what can be done with old properties on blockchain, and whether or not the LMO structure could apply to old properties, for example.
Yeah, that's
The
awesome.
slice. Oh, sorry,
No, that's good.
my bad.
Sly Stone.
Oh, Sly Stone, his thing, he created Rocky, but he doesn't own Rocky.
Mm.
Some family owns Rocky. One of the executive producer families that helped it get going owns it outright, and now they're just telling stories out of that world without his approval.
Ah,
And he doesn't like what's happening with the characters.
yeah.
So, and I think a lot of fans can let that resonate with them. And there's an intellectual property that you care about where that's happened. I guarantee you.
Guaranteed,
So,
guaranteed. So when you look at Sly Stone as that's kind of an opposite side where the actual creator has been essentially robbed of his IP rights, right? Or their
yeah.
IP rights. So what do you think he could do or they could do kind of within their rights? Maybe it can't be Rocky, quote unquote, but like you could lean into the fact that you did create Rocky and I'm the creator of Rocky and here's my new, property, do you think that that would kind of help someone like Sly to potentially carve out a whole new space on the blockchain? Like, I don't know if he's familiar with it, but it seems like someone like that who's been basically done wrong by the industry could come in and be like, hey, you know, let's do something new and like fight back. I created Rocky. I'm the real brains behind it. Here's my new idea and let's run with it. You know, I feel like that would be
welcome Sly with open arms at Elmo.
right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I would say, Sly, please come executive produce press pass.
There we go.
I know professional basketball sports media might be out of the world for you, but I have a character you can play. And then past that, there's a few movies I have that would be great vehicles for him. But then also, I'm exactly like you. Like, let's come up with something new. You know, he's still a young guy.
Nice.
You know, so let's come up with something new. He's got another 20, 30 years of storytelling in him, I bet.
There you
So
go.
let's come up with something new. Let him have Rocky. I know. It's what got you the start. It seeded everything. It's the genesis.
Mhm.
Well, I don't know if it was Rocky, right? It was a lot of things there,
Right,
but
yeah, of course.
that was one of the big ones. And so emotionally and spiritually, it's going to forever mean a lot. And it's going to forever hurt to see another piece be released from that universe that you didn't have any say over and didn't approve of, because these are your characters. You created them. They're your children, and
Right.
so to speak. So the answer now is we're not going to negotiate the franchise with any financier, because that's what's happened with the Tarantino situation, the Sly Stone situation. That's what happens to all your favorite TV shows that get
All
canceled.
of them. All the
All of
film, TV, film, movies.
When we go sit down with well, let me not say any specific one, but when we go sit down with a major financier, a production house that is rubber stamping the yes on our projects, because not a lot of people know this.
Hmm.
So just to get into the right room, right? So that's to get to the pitch, to get into the pitch meeting, you have to know people who know people who know people. And I
Right.
don't know those. I know some of the people who know people. I don't know the people.
Right.
So I'm not going to get in the pitch in the pitch meeting anytime soon. But you get in the pitch meeting, okay? You have to have all these benchmarks lined up, and that makes sense because the same benchmarks are what we use to present our projects to the
Of course.
community.
It's accountability, right?
Yeah, you have to have well-stated ambitions, and
Mhm.
that's what we're pitching.
Mhm.
And so if they like it, this is what a lot of people don't know. This is about how the shows and films get made. If a production house likes that show, or they will make an offer, and the offer is usually contained in something called a first look deal. And a first look deal is kind of like the same thing that they'll option a musician or or an author to, where you bring them this IP, they're going to sign the intellectual property at the franchise level. You might sell it to them outright, full ownership, like what Pulp Fiction and Miramax, that deal.
Mhm.
Or they might do some sort of option for 75 years, which is basically full ownership.
Basically a lifetime, yeah.
And it's always at the franchise level. So you're bringing them a specific story that you want to tell, a film or or a season of TV that tells them, maybe, maybe there's a series in there, but you're
Mhm.
bringing them a story that you'd like to tell, and they're going to buy or option the entire world. They're going to buy or option your exclusive time and your production for the next 2 to 3 years. So that means that not only did what you brought them is theirs, but everything that you create in the next 2 or 3 years, they have the first rights to.
Wow.
Yeah. And the money on that's going to be good if you're starving, but then a year or two into it, after you become you know, that machine, that ain't going to be good money anymore. And that's
So
going to be like 90,000 a year, something like that, maybe with
right.
incremental rate. You might own points on the work. You might not, depends on who you are. Points are the
Right.
way
Yeah.
that
The lead actors, right? The lead actors get some points maybe if they're lucky. You get the Jack
right,
Nicholson treatment on Batman.
right. And that's just the way the industry uses to basically distribute some of the revenue streams on a work.
Mm,
For example, Mark Hamill was smart enough to take points in Star Wars
genius.
on toys.
Oh, on toys. Oh, okay.
Yeah, forever.
Right.
That man has a split on Star Wars toys forever.
Hmm.
So he's just been able to enjoy a career sitting in an office voicing the Joker rather
That's
than
the life.
having to go
Yeah.
bust ass on set, because he doesn't need to, So he still gets to act, he still gets to
So
create and enjoy the world, but
Yeah,
It doesn't have
looking at the Let Me Out Productions kind of tokenized standard, right? Like it seems like the goal is basically to get that type of point system for not just the actors and production team, but actually even the community, right? Some type of buy-in. Yeah, how does that work, and how is it decentralizing essentially film production?
I'm so glad that we get, because I've been so dense with this all year, and that I've needed a year to experience market contrast to figure out how to simplify this. So it's actually pretty simple. You
Mm,
create art, you mint the art to a blockchain, which is providing that piece of art a immutable, meaning it cannot be changed, and permanent serial number.
yep.
And then write it in your document of well stated ambitions. You state who owns that property. If it's you and you're an individual, that's great. If it's you and a creator group, that's also great. If it's a DAO, that's also great.
Yeah.
This works for every single layer of content creation. And then you fractionalize the ownership to that endeavor. Now, there's layers to this. The document, the well-stated ambition document, I'm going to say deed, but I also want to be clear that that might change depending on where you're at locally,
Mm,
and that don't just go form deeds without talking to council about what's locally required first. Okay, that
cool.
said, when you create a story, um, the story also exists in a world. So every time a creator has an idea, they've created at least two assets. And this is also true for every artist. When you create an art piece, that art piece exists in a story, which then exists in a world. So anytime you have a world that you can describe and define, write a deed to it, claim that, put it on chain. Now we're not negotiating the world anymore as creators. We're not going to toss the table.
Yeah.
Oh, we want your friend? No, no. That's on chain here, and we're not transacting that. Sorry. Um, and then incidentally, you also have public proof of origin, immutable public proof of origin for that particular concept. Then you go write another deed to the specific story that you're telling out of that franchise.
Mm.
So the film or the
So
season of
breaking that
television.
down, it would be like the original deed for Marvel, and then a micro deed or the next deed for like a specific comic book or a specific maybe Spider-Man, right? Or like,
Mhm.
right. So a specific kind of branch of that larger universe.
Right. So we're
Mm.
basically going to be building umbrellas of intellectual property provenance on the blockchain. So,
Genius, man.
um,
Um, yeah, continue. Sorry.
yeah, I think that's a great way of putting it. Umbrellas of intellectual property provenance,
That's
where
it.
the franchise is the tip, and then everything that be contained in the franchise, be they limited stories, films, seasons of television, metaverse experiences, augmented reality presentations, s- theater, um,
Anything and everything. Yeah.
anything. Music, characters, art, everything can be umbrellaed and chaptered under your organization of intellectual property using deeds, which just describe and state the ambitions of each particular thing underneath that intellectual property franchise. It
Right.
states the ambitions if it doesn't exist, and if it does exist, then it just describes what exists. And you can update these. That's what's the beautiful thing. It's that's why it's like
Yeah, you can update the metadata, right? But only the creator can update the metadata.
only the
So
creator
that's
can
a very
update the
important
deed.
caveat, not just anybody,
Mhm.
right? Yeah.
Right, and then only the creator can update the deed, and this is where it gets really crazy. You can fractionalize your ownership to anything. You can say, "Oh, I have 100% ownership of my phone, and I'm gonna fractionalize it. I'm gonna write a deed to my phone." You can do this. This is something you can do.
Very
I'm gonna write a
interesting.
deed to my phone, and I'm gonna fractionalize my ownership to my phone to 100,000 parts.
So when stating something as a deed and then fractionalizing it, and importantly fractionalizing it purely for ownership and not from a perspective of get this fraction and you'll 10x your investment kind of thing, right? Because
Right,
that's when you
exactly.
get into the security kind of area, right? Making those promises on financial gains. But to your point, there's already the deed as a legal thing, right? That can be done, and fractionalizing that deed after your research you found is totally above board and all good. So all you're doing is taking that process and putting it on the blockchain essentially, and kind of adding this layer of immutability and digital verifiability to that kind of deed process, if I'm understanding correctly.
Yes. The
Cool.
deed is to help define the relationship with the consumer of what they're getting involved with on the property.
Mm.
It's also to describe the property, provide the creator proof of origin on the blockchain with a timestamp down to the millisecond. I'm telling y'all, it's already been
It's
proven
really
useful
making
for
use of the technology more than anything. It's taking stuff that kind of should or already does exist in the film industry, or not even in the film industry, but just in the world, as an economic option, as far as deeds, and then applying it to the film industry and applying it to blockchain. It's really cool. I was curious because you had mentioned how kind of the B20 fractionalized protocol that the Beeple buyers, whatever, Metapurse created was kind of your inspiration. Do you think that Let Me Out Productions kind of as a model requires its own protocol essentially to really make this, something that could be easily taken and used from an open source perspective, by other production
That's why we
companies
made
down
it
the
open
road?
source.
If you're the ones who create it, then you've always got that. I mean, you already have it on paper and you have the concept, so you are the one who created it. But I feel like that next layer of certainty would be to actually have a dev create a protocol that does all of these things and is, you could even call it the LMO protocol,
Well, we'll get there eventually. I'd got to pay the dev team,
Right. Yeah,
and
no, it's a big, big lift, I guess. Yeah.
their launch fee is 25,000. So I have to cover that, and then also cover the rest of the pre-production unit, which is at in total 180,000 for the pre-pro unit. And so once we achieve that value raised in the collection for season one of Press Pass, and we'll also, at this point we're considering all Ethereum value raised towards the benchmarks for season one of Press Pass.
Right.
We'll be able to launch pre-pro and get our dev team on it. Now, the benefit of making that open source, and also the benefit of being so early before any contrast came into the space, because I published the paper of the first draft of the first public draft of the LMO structure was published on March 21st, 2021, and we minted the first company ownership token. So going back to the deed thing, I own Let Me Out Productions LLC. That's
Mm-hmm.
the sole owner with the state of California.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to welcome in 20 named partners, including 2 co-founders and a number of people that sit on our creative board and our advisory board.
Yeah.
So I wrote a deed to name my partners and welcome them into the endeavor, and I filed that with the state of California. I also fractionalized my ownership to Let Me Out Productions in that deed and say this is how I'm going to negotiate, track, define, represent ownership with these partners. So normally you can do that anyway. You say, okay, 20% go to this partner, 15% to this, whatever.
Right.
But when you fractionalize and use a pool of non-fungible tokens to track those assignments, it's so useful.
Right. And
Because
it's so
now
accountable, right? There's no more, like fudging the numbers or writing in something that wasn't totally agreed upon or whatever. Like everything's in black and white on the blockchain, right? It's amazing.
Exactly.
I want to say what's up to Rick. We got Rick in the chat, Meta Screenplays, and thanks to the Let Me Out Productions dropping the link in there. Definitely recommend everybody go check out their OpenSea Let Me Out Productions. You can find all of their tokens on there and invest and be part of this amazing decentralized production structure. I got a couple myself, definitely, full disclosure. But Rick had a question. So what steps should you take to define tech stories on the blockchain? So do you think that this kind of system how could it apply to stories of literature as opposed to film maybe?
If you go to the intellectual property collection for Press Pass, there's 2 deeds on chain that we have: the deed of partnership to Let Me Out Productions, and then the deed of assignment to season 1 of intellectual property. Season 1 of Press Pass,
Cool.
and both of them are on our OpenSea collection. They're on OpenSea, and so that's free to mint. And you can convert your PDF to an MP4 and mint that. I suggest keeping a change log in the document for any updates that you file, and then link to the PDF for anybody who owns a token in that endeavor, so they can print that out, hang it on their wall, highlight their token ID, etc. So it's free to mint. There it is. Yeah. Well, I
Very
got the
cool.
paper. There's what do we got here?
Yeah, I'm seeing there's LMO structure for tokenomics.
That works too. I mean, that's a paper that I converted to an MP4 and put on the chain.
Cool. And does it
So
come
and
with the unlockable PDF? Or
no,
maybe
you
I'm
can't
looking
buy
at the
that.
wrong
That's just for
collection.
proof of origin. These are for so one of the counselors that I spoke to early in the process. There's been some debate about this in Web3 between a bunch of intellectual property lawyers, entertainment lawyers, et cetera, et cetera. Um, the counselor that I spoke to early in the process, and I had three different counselors working with us when I was putting together that paper, um, said that blockchain proof of origin will win out in a court case for provenance. So if there's
Nice.
ever any dispute for like, he's got the teams on screen that from what I'm watching here, and we
Hmm.
have the Miami crypto.
Yeah.
So if somebody else were to come up with the Miami crypto as a fictional professional basketball team in their story world, that's the point of origins in our story world. So
Right. Yeah.
if they wanted a relationship with that team, they'd have to license it with us,
No
which is
doubt.
totally doable,
Yeah, so it's all on
completely
there.
doable.
I don't want to lose
Yeah,
track of Rick's question though. Specifically, do
yeah,
you
yeah.
think it would apply kind of in structure? Putting these kind of deeds on the blockchain could help kind of literature stories. I mean, I guess we brought up
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
we brought up the example of Marvel, right? And those were all works of literature. So in the same sense that Marvel would kind of be the top universe IP, that initial, this is a universe of superheroes, and this is a concept I have, and then there's Spider-Man underneath there, and there's Captain America and such. I mean, maybe Captain America came first, whatever the case may be. But yeah, so there's the overarching kind of like universe that you would set up a deed around, and then there's maybe stories underneath that you could mint and set up fractionalized ownership to, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And every world, no matter what it is, even if it's a documentary or a historical presentation, your deed is not establishing a fictional world then, but you are establishing a lens of observation. That's what you're claiming.
Lens of
Especially,
observation. I like it.
yeah, lens of observation, because if you're doing a documentary franchise, you are presenting a certain lens. So that's what you're claiming in relationship with the story material. And then
For
same
sure.
thing with a nonfiction piece. So I think people can mint their all their drafts on chain. There's actually a fantastic interface. I use OpenSea just because it's free. You pay the initializing fee to get on the platform, which for me was about $200 US, but it's in Ethereum, so it fluctuates.
Yeah,
There's other
it will
platforms
not
where
be
you
that
can.
high for other people right now. I think you were doing that at like peak 2021 gas. It's like $10 or $20 now to initialize.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh
sure,
man, I
sure.
got
It's
yeah.
not that
Well, that was
much.
back in when was that? That was back toward the end of March
Yeah,
2021.
no, it shouldn't be that much at all. I think maybe $10 to $20 for that first initial mint cost. Again, at low gas. Just wait until gas is below 10-15. To your other question, Rick, PDFs won't make it much different, cheaper or more as far as minting cost. To what Kimani was just saying, basically the initial pay, there is a cost to kind of sign the contract to allow you to mint on OpenSea. It varies depending on the gas, but I would recommend waiting until gas is below like 20 Gwei, which is pretty often these days, or even below 10, and it'll be probably $10, maybe up to $20 tops for that initial signature on the contract to allow you to mint on OpenSea. But after that, there's no cost at all. They do what they call lazy minting, where the person who purchases the piece from you will actually pay the cost for minting at the time that they purchase it. So it's just that initial cost to get set up on OpenSea, but after that, no additional cost to mint as many stories or PDFs as you'd like. So thanks for the question, man. It's awesome. Oh, and apparently mintgate.io is another option that you plugged in there.
Yeah, that one you can mint PDFs for free. I don't remember there being an initialization fee
Okay.
for Gate, but anytime you're interacting with the Web3 site and they're asking for a verification transaction, there's probably to be a slight cost of entry to it. So
Yeah.
it's always good to have a little bit of Ethereum when you're navigating these Web3 streets.
That's it.
But yeah, the just umbrella everything. So anytime you can form a franchise around your creations. Anytime, put that franchise on chain, even if it's just like a one-page thing on a Softman interface where you convert your PDF to an MP4 and put it on OpenSea and hide it so nobody can see it. That way, you have your proof of origin on chain established, and you're comfortable. developing that material and moving forward with creating a community around it. That's the other nice thing about having it on chain is you're
This is such an important conversation, Kimani. Honestly, I'm surprised. I'm like 28 episodes in. I've never even thought about this whole concept of really using blockchain as a legal kind of proof of concept, certifying, tool.
It's weird because that's the only thing I was thinking when I came in, man. I was like, wait a minute. So I could contract not the individual, but the token ID. That's basically the long and the short of it.
Right.
You're writing when you're providing collectors' rights in the intellectual property that's backed by an ownership assignment. You have to make it explicitly clear that they are not collecting a future flow of wealth in any sort of passive way. They can collaborate on that wealth, or they can collaborate on the project, and then you can pay them. Pay them whatever you want,
that's
but
an important distinction, though.
yeah, they have to collaborate. Like I saw something the other day where one of the marketplaces said that they had paid out over 530 million to the folks that were staking their the coin for the marketplace.
Mhm.
And I'm like, dang, I I know right now that doesn't violate any purview, right? But that is absolutely an instrument for financial reward.
Right.
If you're staking, if you're staking NFTs or you're staking a cryptocurrency, and then you're earning and they're paying you for staking, I don't know. Actually, I think that might fall in legal advice that I'm not qualified
No,
to
I
give.
hear you, and that is a sensitive area, and I've heard from a lot of people in the space. Well, not a lot, but basically the more kind of legally cautious, maybe more sensitive around some of that so-called security legislation or the Howey test or whatever, and a lot of those guys who are more concerned about those things basically do not go near any NFTs that promise staking rewards. They're just like, oh, you're talking about staking? No, I'm not interested. Like, and I'm there like, yo, that sounds awesome. I'm gonna stake my hero. I'm gonna get a bunch of NFT free NFTs or like different coins dropped to me. It's like, yeah, sure, I'll take it. I'll try it out. But with that in mind, I don't make a lot of money on that. I don't make any money on that, for the feds listening. But it's like it's an interesting angle. And to be opposed to staking, to me, seems like America's really setting themselves up to be at a disadvantage in the industry, because I don't think that like Canada, where I'm at, or even Western Europe and a lot of other advanced kind of societies are going to take that same hard tact against kind of staking in the crypto space, because I don't think it's the same as a security. Like when I read the actual black and white text of what America calls a security and why they have these protections and that, I get it, and I see why they exist, but I just don't think it applies to the same extent in the crypto space when you're looking at a global decentralized technology that in order to actually enforce that, you have to actually reach into the blockchain, identify that person's wallet address, connect their wallet address to their individual legal name and entity, social insurance number, then find out everything they're doing, all the tentacles. I mean, and now you hear they're hiring however crazy amount of new IRS agents and SEC people. So maybe they're up for the task. Maybe that is what they want to do, but it just sounds horrible and antiquated to me. It's like, yeah.
If you're a creator, this is why the LMO structure is so important to establish as infrastructure. I want to help protect you, and the consumer, because our responsibility when it comes to that's why all that stuff exists. So we don't defraud the consumer. That's why all that exists.
In theory, yes.
In theory. So if we establish infrastructure in this early space where we have we're all agreeing to ethically establish our intellectual properties and define interactions with our token holders in a publicly transparent way that's not hidden behind the code of a smart contract. That's the other benefit of using the LMO structure and traditional paperwork to spell out the relationship with the token collector. If you went to there's I wonder there's a Kimani's personal collection under the LMO collections.
Yep.
And then that's where the deed of partnership is for LMO Productions, and that's the one.
It's not the Okearah one.
Um.
I was going to ask you about your photography, but I want to wrap up the let me out conversation first, because I really like your photography, and I like that you've incorporated some of them into the LMO stuff too. But yeah, I would need the Is it proof of origin?
Oh, let me just send the I'll put the link in the chat
Cool, cool.
because I forget that we are in a modern era where you can do that
Yeah,
sort of thing.
we're just live streaming. We're riding with it. Again, if anyone has questions in the chat, thanks, Rick. Great question. What's up, Sasha? Anybody else? We're hanging out. We're talking Web3 film production, and specifically the historically relevant and very important conversation that Let Me Out Productions really initiated early last year, about content creation, IP rights, and really being able to use the blockchain to really cover yourself and build a legal argument, show that your IP rights exist in real time on the blockchain. And I think just that alone is so important and not said enough, that this technology is really making a new avenue for IP accreditation, really, or IP certification, maybe, on the blockchain. And I just don't hear enough people talking about it that way. And I like that you actually went through the legwork to speak to legal counsel and say, like, this is obviously proof of concept, right? Like, once I put it on the blockchain, if I've put it on the blockchain before anyone else in the world has said anything about it, and then you start seeing people stealing that idea, I can go back and point to this piece on the blockchain as proof that I created it, right? And you've had a lawyer tell you, yes, that'll definitely stand up in court. Like, that's amazing. It's very
Yes.
important.
In fact, I won't dox his name out loud, but his Twitter handle. Actually, I don't know if this is true anymore, but he had the @Fiddigel uh, Twitter handle, and he's an IP lawyer, and he's a great resource of education in particularly when it comes to IP and entertainment law. And then I'm one of my main counselors that I've been working with for a decade now is an entertainment lawyer, entertainment fashion law. And I also had another guy who was a securities regulator from the Reagan administration. So you want to
Wow.
talk about a hard ass when it comes to
The
fractional ownership.
securities regulator under Ronald Reagan. Sheesh, you got some
Yeah,
interesting
I'm a
contacts there,
resource.
Kimani.
You can look him up. His name's Alan Ettinger. He was phenomenal. We had some great conversations regarding this.
Amazing,
But
man.
yeah, so I put a link in the chat to the deed of partnership to Let Me Out Productions, and I converted the PDF to an MP4 and then minted that to the blockchain. And every page, it's a new page every 5 seconds. So you can full screen it and then do that. And then if you're a token holder, you have access to the full PDF and you can print it out. We
And
do
that's
that
any
so nobody can
token. Any
copy it.
token gets you access to that.
The ones you have do.
Yeah, yeah, cool.
So, because you have the tokens mentioned in the deed, so you have access to the paper.
Nice.
So, basically, this is a well-defined statement of ambition of what Let Me Out Productions is and does, and where we're going, and what we're doing with our collective. And for those who are interested in finding out how you fractionalize, this is a great document to use as a reference. Again, not legal advice because this changes depending on where you're at locally. I'm in
For sure.
Sacramento, California. and-
Regional things. Yeah.
Yeah, Sacramento County, California. There's different things we can do with deeds and LLCs where I can write a deed and have a private endeavor with up to 99 partners. Have one of the partners be a trust. Have that trust be managed by. Anyway, I won't get too deep into
Yeah,
it.
yeah. No,
So,
you've done your work, man. You've done your research for
yeah.
sure.
So on the minute and a half mark, 1:30, the collector rights are defined in that deed of partnership, and you can see the language there, all the properties and the rights that these tokens have, and not just that they have, but these are the only rights that they have, unless the community would like to discuss rights expansion. But that's the beautiful thing is that now we have a community to discuss rights expansion with,
Exactly. Exactly.
and we can just say we can work together and say, okay, what's working, what's not.
Hmm.
Can we improve this relationship? Because everybody knows who's collecting, know what they're getting involved with this document. So if you like the art on a company ownership token, go for it. But there's also a ton of utility that's provided by a company ownership token.
Yeah, so maybe you can
including.
speak to that a little bit because I think you did mention the important caveat that you don't get passive income from the company ownership token. So, what is some of the utility and what are the benefits down the road? Let's say Press Pass blows up and Netflix is signing you and you got all this revenue coming in, or sorry, I shouldn't mention specific one, but anyone signs you, whatever the case
Oh
may
yeah,
be.
hey, Netflix,
But,
please.
let's say that happens and there's all this, the project's blowing up, revenue's growing. What is, if not a passive benefit, is there any financial benefit for the company ownership holders? Or is it more of a matter of just having that voice within the organization to at least be part of the organization and then benefit from it, tangentially, kind of?
There's guaranteed access to paid collaboration, and
Okay.
that paid collaboration uses the equity assignment to the token as
Hmm.
part of the math of the consideration.
Interesting. Cool, cool, cool. So guaranteed assignment as a token holder when you reach
Right.
out and say, I'd
You
like
have
to
to
help with
volunteer.
X task or even pitching a specific idea. What do you think
Yeah,
that
good
looks
pitch.
like?
Well, that's the number one chip, right? The number one thing that we can provide to NFT holders is ownership. But you don't want to provide that explicitly with a flow of wealth across from that ownership.
Hmm.
At least as of right now, that is illegal. Um, we'll see how the laws adjust to this technology. Maybe that won't be forever. We don't know,
Yeah.
especially because we are the government.
I would hope it would innovate. I would hope that.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
hope we update because we're also, we also have to realize as human beings that we are the government. So,
exactly.
we're not beholden to these pie in the sky things. I honestly, I mean, hey, I know there's a lot of conspiracy out there, but I'm also one of the people that's like, how much time is there really in a day?
No doubt, right? It's tough, man.
um,
You got to
but
balance it. You got to find that balance.
Right. So number one perk is the 0.0002% ownership to Let Me Out Productions that's assigned specifically to the serial number
Right.
of that piece of art on the blockchain. So when you collect that piece of art, you are also collecting that ownership assignment as it's assigned indeed to that token ID. You can print out the document, hang it on the wall, highlight the token IDs you've collected, and know that that's your interaction right there. This is decentralized, meaning that I don't have. This is why I'm able to do this in Sacramento. I don't have to name you guys as individual partners because I can only name 99 named partners.
Hmm.
I got 80,000 token IDs in here that all have assignment of ownership.
So there's
And
not any potential place down the road where they're going to come asking for some kind of proof or I don't know KYC on these many owners of collector tokens.
I don't see how that's anybody's business aside from mine.
Right.
Is the thing. Like I'm the one who's chosen to navigate my ownership of this asset this way.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And it's public. I'm not defrauding the consumer. So that's basically the long and the short of it. What is there to govern? Is it a behavioral issue? Because so that's my belief on it.
No, that's
I'm
good.
a
That's good because you've got to put that line somewhere. That goes to the
right.
financial or the kind of sovereignty and the accountability that we are, all about in Web3 and on the blockchain. And I think that there has to be some kind of line. And as long you seem to, you've obviously done your research, so you know where that line is. And so it's really cool. And to your point, it might be different by region, by jurisdiction, but you are confident in the way you've broken it down here. So I mean, it's a big lift, right? So 500,000 non-fungible tokens is a lot. You're not too concerned about someone really loving your idea and coming in with like $1 million and buying up, I don't know, half or more
Well,
of
it's
them, or
impossible to do that
it's impossible
because
to do that.
yeah, you don't want your tokens and your token pools to be seen as a facility for investment, especially at a platform level.
Hmm.
Project by project, that's different.
Right.
Platform level, I'm a limited liability company. I'm not seeking investment from collectors. I'm seeking community growth. I'm seeking committed community members. So I have when I filed the company as an LLC in early 2021. Before that, I was a sole proprietorship.
Hmm.
Um, I that's when I filed the fractionalized ownership, and 84% of the company is assigned to myself. I'm at 23.6%. our two co-founders at 19% each, and then our various board members at most 2%, right? So
Right.
altogether, those assignments total for 84% of the company, and
Mhm.
therefore 84% of those 500,000 tokens are already spoken for, and they don't exist yet. They don't need to exist yet. But when we're ready for the official ceremony for transfer, all of the named partners in the deed of partnership will receive their tokens to back the equity in the deed.
That's
They're
amazing,
they're
man.
already they are they're already the percentage partners indeed. Like, that's already established with the state. I'm
Yeah,
choosing as the company founder to back and track those assignments with this non-fungible token model. That's my choice as a platform founder.
sure.
So, and I'm choosing to make 16% of those tokens available to consumers, and they will have predefined interactions with Let Me Out Productions if they possess that asset. But because they're not named partners, they don't have a partner role for collecting that token, and it's not a security. It's not something where they are, a shareholder in the business. They've collected a piece of art that has a serial number.
Mm.
That serial number has been assigned ownership in my deed to the company, which provides them the ownership assignment to the token ID, which is used in math to facilitate payment by a separate organization that runs that system for us called the Top Brass DAO. So you have a
Nice.
platform, and then the DAO supports runs a department for the platform. The platform funds the DAO treasury, and the DAO pays token holders for participation in that DAO.
And would that top brass DAO be specific to Let Me Out though, or is that something that you see kind of overseeing, almost like the protocol or the structure of LMO, that could be applied to other entities eventually? Because I'm really seeing, like, to your point about the provenance and the fact that you were the first to kind of really lay this out and do a lot of this groundwork, and you've laid it out very nicely for people to understand. Are you concerned about going forward how this is going to be kind of utilized on an open source basis? And I mean, to that point we raised earlier, maybe it has to be an actual EIP protocol, if you're sticking to Ethereum. But yeah, just basically, like, what are your next steps, I guess, is the kind of question on the structure side, not obviously on the LMO production side. You keep with marketing, keep pushing it, hoping people will resonate and get those investors in, and that is a clear trajectory. But I do feel like from the technical importance of the structure that you've presented and the research you've done, and you've put it all on the chain, I feel like the next step is getting a protocol ironed out. I want to say what's up to Hex and Charles. He was saying this is deep, and he loved your answer about it being nobody's business as far as those 500,000 purchasers. So yeah, I'm just like, what's your next step on that structure side of things? Because I just feel like the LMO Productions and press pass and getting that done is definitely priority. But I feel
Yeah.
like you don't want to lose sight of the provenance and the importance of the technical kind of revelations that you've like done so much research around and minted on the blockchain. What are your next steps on that side, and are you
I have to
concerned?
shout out some people,
Okay.
right? You remember Ian, decentralized producer?
Ian, yeah.
Yeah. Petra, Zach. Petra is heterotic on Discord if you see them, and Zach runs the Hidden Ones DAO and Slender DAO.
Mm,
Those three individuals are also early adopters of Web3 technology for film production purposes. They were all about the LMO structure from day one, super supportive, and they have taken it upon themselves not just to build a protocol that would work for LMO structure, but a protocol that works for a lot of different systems that have popped up in the what we call the film 3 space.
awesome.
Um, so it's called Greenlit Protocol. We're a part of. See, this is why we believe in cross network support and bridging, because I'm not a developer.
Right.
I don't know much about it. I can read a smart contract. I got myself to that point, but I've already tried coding a number of different things in this space. That's not where I'm strong at. So I
And
like to
it's
stay in
not
my
for
lane. I'm a
everyone.
producer, you know. And so I would like to get to the value point in our race to get the dev team on it so we can get our systems in place. But Greenlit protocol will actually facilitate tokenized interactions that have been spelled out in a deed, which is
Awesome. So
awesome.
the community is working with you, and it's underway. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
So we
amazing, man.
actually
That's good
have
to
it
hear.
already built to the point where they haven't launched yet, but we're part of their beta. And beyond that, sorry, I have to take these. I got a disability I take these things for, and now it's anyway.
Well, it's no
Beyond
problem. We
that,
can
I've
wind
been
down soon. I know it's a long convo.
no, it's all good. I
Okay.
can I do this all day anyway,
All right.
right?
Cool.
Um, but beyond that, I've been dabbling at getting some of our token gates up ourselves. So if you have a company ownership token, most of the perks that are spelled out are already available to you, even if it's just in like my the Kimani way.
Hmm.
But it's it's token gated and it's well done. And then as time goes on, it's going to look a lot more fancier and well
Hmm.
developed. But we are that grassroots project where we are like the first company ownership token and that mints the model to the chain was minted March 24th, 2021. So we're talking a month before Bored Apes. That's why David keeps saying we're historical and all this stuff.
Yeah.
Um, I don't wa- I don't like saying first anymore at all because we were all about that at the time, and
Hmm.
I think it just rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. So I like historical. That's a great copy. And then there's other producers that were around that maybe I wasn't familiar with because I was in Decentraland and they were on Clubhouse. But everybody who was part of that 2020, 2021 class, I think, deserves celebration. There's a lot of people doing cool stuff.
Yeah.
The company ownership tokens specifically are how you design interactions with the platform. We do the ownership assignment. We have exclusive access, of course, to our the part owner spaces and development spaces, and the right to identify with full authenticity as a part owner of Let Me Out Productions, or part of the top brass that runs Let Me Out Productions, of which David is a valued member of both. So
Let's
I'm
go. Let's go.
very excited about that. By the way, I'm spelling these out not just to shill the tokens because we need to get more
Hey,
collectors, but also
it's not nothing wrong with showing something like this, and we're here to talk about your project and definitely encourage people to look up the Let Me Out Productions and consider investing because it's really ahead of its time, and yeah, it's going to be really cool looking back when you see, whether it's greenlit protocol, whether it's people referencing the LMO structure, using it as a template. I am sure it's going to be significant. It's not going anywhere.
and right now we're so early that a political game's being played where none of us really have clout,
Mm.
and we know that clout goes a long way. And web, and like a viral day can change lives, right?
Oh yeah,
Like
it's wild.
a good, like so that's what we've built projects for. The company ownership token collection is not built that way, because again, we don't want to be a facility for investment. So 80,000 tokens will be available to the community. We will make maximum 200 available at any given time from Let Me Out Productions. So in the event there's a cascade and we go viral and all 200 sell out, we
Mm.
can actually freeze release and keep up with the obligations to our current
Right.
token holders. So one of the things, and that was designed that way from day one, which is because I knew from day one when you have something that has potentially 80,000 members,
Mm.
if I release 80,000 tokens at once, there's no possible way I could scale fast enough to meet the obligations to those token holders. And you see that all throughout the Web3 space. And so you have a lot of projects that, let's be real, these are kids, like 20, 22-year-old
Right.
kids that maybe had the intentions well thought out when they stepped into that role, but then all of a sudden they have 10,000 consumers they have to answer to,
Right.
and they've never done that before in their lives,
Right.
and they have no idea how to scale that from the grassroots to the capability that they need to scale to. So this entire relationship that the LMO structure spells out between the creator and the consumer is, I think, vital infrastructure for how projects should be built in this space, going well beyond the film industry. The language in the papers just in the film industry because I stay in my lane.
Yeah, for
That's what
sure.
I know and that's what I do. So these perks are not just great for you as a collector, but they're also a great example for what you can do for your token holders in your platform or project. So we do exclusive access to spaces for the token holders. Most projects do. We do access to participate in our top brass DAO and eligibility to run for positions in the DAO. and the positions are paid salary positions. So, um, really
And
cool
so it's
stuff.
kind of a scenario where the collectors are seen as kind of friends of the DAO or whatever, and they'll get first dibs kind of thing. Like
Well, the DAO
on,
is a separate organization from Let Me Out Productions,
right.
and Let Me Out Productions doesn't actually own any of the DAO. The DAO has a contract with Let Me Out Productions where they perform a specific service to Let Me Out Productions, where they run a department of the company. Um, the DAO itself is not necessarily producing content; they are an audience experience DAO. So they're
Cool.
there to augment the audience experience of the creators and Let Me Out Productions. That's the purpose of the DAO. So any creator that's working with Let Me Out Productions can plug their tokens into that DAO and have the DAO facilitate the rights that they want to spell out to their token holders, or they can go out on their own and form their own thing.
No
They can do
doubt.
that at any point in time. They don't If you're a token holder in Let Me Out Productions and you're in the development process with us, you have full sovereignty at any point in time to break off and go do your own thing. Everything is non-exclusive.
That's
So,
interesting.
we are a service. So that's how that works.
Very
Um,
cool.
you can give potential early access to collectible drops and promotional materials through tokens. You can do what we do at the platform is if you have even one company ownership token, you have the right to develop an idea with a creative producer that works for Let Me Out Productions, and their responsibility is to service the development of a story outline into a production-ready asset. So this access is limited to 2 scheduled meetings each calendar month at a rate of 3 hours maximum per meeting, and it's limited to 1 story at a time for collectors of less than 177 company ownership tokens, and it's a right that's limited directly to the custodian of the token holding wallet. So just to break all that down, just to explain it, not even to this isn't even a shill thing, but we are a development house here. We do produce assets, but
Mhm.
we want creators to feel comfortable using the LMO structure as a process. So when a creator works with us, we're going to make sure their franchise is on chain. We're going to make sure the story that they brought us is on chain. We're going to make sure that story has all of the ambitions well stated and thought out in a deed or whatever legal wrapper is appropriate for their local governance, and we will help that creator form a token pool to complete the community budget raise for their production budget.
Wow.
And the main reason we do the Elmo structure is because when I was found out earlier, when we take a franchise to a main house, they get 100% of the thing.
Mhm.
Well, now we're not taking any franchise to any house. It's yours. We don't
Exactly.
want to go like that.
That's the
We're
thing.
not
The house
interested in
is
the
the
franchise.
blockchain.
Yeah, it's your idea. So I respect that. I respect creative sovereignty.
That's what's up. No,
So
that's
we're a
amazing,
service,
man.
dude.
And
So
yeah, I really liked what you were saying about maxing it at 200 at a time. That's really interesting, and it does run counter to a lot of what you see in the space, right? Just trying to go as big as possible, sell out as quick as possible. So it's really cool that you've taken that approach to purposely not allow, a kind of viral moment where you're just caught unawares and now you've got tens of thousands of people to answer to and not enough, kind of done and laid out ahead of it. So it's cool that you're doing this kind of phases
you
in
can do that on the
200.
show side. The season one of Press Pass, there's 530,916 tokens available in season one of Press Pass. So those can sell out in a day.
Right.
And that's actually designed for every show and film, every audience experience built on the Elmo structure is designed to sell out in a day. Platforms that are built on the Elmo structure should always be on some sort of fixed growth curve. What we do is a chronological growth curve. So every token is 0.001 ETH more than the last one that was released, and it's directly across from the numbers. So token
Right.
number 222 is 0.222 ETH. So that said, if you're watching this and you have a little bit of ETH right now, we got 13 early adopter tokens left at 0.007. It's like $15, $2,
Yeah.
$3 gas. All right, so
Easy
that's a
entry.
company ownership token.
There you go. There you go. I got those ones up on the screen right now. Check them out. But yeah, thank you, man. That's really amazing. One quick question on this before we briefly touch on your photography. I know we're well over the
Yeah, sorry.
hour and a half now. But yeah, on the topic of, looking at the more Web2 traditional space, which of course is like still 98% of film industry stuff, right? What do you think is the general perception of this avenue, among both producers and actors, looking at the film industry? Is this something that is going to be eventually welcomed, or do you think that there's always going to be is going to eventually get to a place where there's two parallel tracks, right? And those who are kind of comfortable doing these blockchain based kind of contracts and, blockchain based funding, and then those who just want to stick with the traditional lane. So how is it being, like, what's the reception now? And then how do you see it evolving?
The reception now has been terrible. And in Hollywood specifically, people are not about this
Right.
because you have to think about from the outside, because if you were in this front, like we were, right? Like early 2021, experiencing the what ifs of before the PFP thing really took off.
Mm-hmm.
Um and then witnessing that was a different experience being involved in it than witnessing outside of that. Because outside of it, maybe you're like me and you didn't understand, it was too dense to get at the beginning of the process, but then you're like, and then you see all the monkeys and the cartoons being sold. And then you're like, okay, I'm a grown adult. I don't want to be involved in that.
Right.
And then you see $600,000 monkey being sold. You're like, okay, well maybe I missed.
Yeah, man, I
But
might have missed something there.
yeah, the reason why it's going to here's the future for it. And I put a link in the chat that goes to our Press Pass Season 1 collection. I'd like to explain what we do with that with our tokens and specifically distributed assets. So films, seasons of television, limited audience experiences. You have a team that came together to produce that experience. That team is spending time on the experience. They are working in departments, and you already have a really well thought organization to assign them equity. So what we do, he's got on the screen our intellectual property tokens for season 1 of Press Pass. The first two there, the 0.02 ETH one is the version 2 collectible. There's 916 of those. That's an audience exclusive meme of production. There's a 0.0091 version 1 collectible. That is the audience exclusive meme of production. It's a 33-second meme. Each one of those collectibles, each edition of those collectibles is assigned 0.000018% ownership over season 1 of Press Pass and has limited rights of interaction with the intellectual property, including the right to make your own meme and sell it out of the strength of, off the strength of the content. For every edition that you have, you can make a meme and sell it. That's how it works. So over all the way to the right of that collection, you have the version 3 collectible. That's the one that we use to anchor my ownership in season 1 because I retain 35%. We anchor the production company's ownership and administration over season 1. They own 35%. The version 1 and 2 collectible for the audience, those total for 10%. So we have 20% ownership of the asset left over. What do? We distributed that ownership to cast, crew, writers, staff, artists, musicians. Everybody that worked directly for the production company on the asset will receive tokenized equity at full project wrap according to their half days worked on season 1 and which department they're in. So for 20%, out of that 20%, it's 866. So 8% go to directors and writers.
Mm-hmm.
That's just an equal split. The we might do a micro pool for directors. We're still figuring that one out. 6% go to cast, 6% to crew, staff, and craftspeople. We count up the half a days each person works on production. So one of our lead cast members who's there for all 130 of the 140 shooting days,
Mm-hmm.
they're going to be there. They're going to have a lot of 6-hour blocks stacked up in that cast pool. Whereas the extra who is there for 2 weeks on episode 8, they'll have a nice chunk of 6-hour blocks added up in that cast pool. So then you have the entire cast, 83 people, that all have their days added up in total, all these 6-hour blocks in total. And then the lead performer out of that, what percentage out of that pool do they have? Oh, okay, 11%. So 6% of our overall token pool for Press Pass goes to cast, and they receive 11% of that number. So now we get down to our first let's fast forward. Press Pass. All 24 episodes are released. We're syndicated. We're 3 months into after being distributed in full, and we are experiencing our first net profit coming in at the end of like Q3 or Q4 2023.
Right.
That net profit goes into a net profit treasury for season 1 of Press Pass, which then pays out to direct collaborators according to the equity that they own. So that's the future.
That sounds
Every proper
very interesting, very innovative.
every property doing 20% equity distribution to cast, crew, writers, and staff, with a net profit, a quarterly net profit issuance directly across from those token IDs, which is set up through a smart contract. And it's so awesome because the collaborators can sell the version 3s to collectors. Collectors are not plugged into that smart contract because they were not hired to work on the property. You can introduce conditions where they might be plugged into that contract, but
What was
we
the
don't touch
version 3
that.
going to sell at? It doesn't look like it's listed right now.
That's not selling. We don't
Oh,
sell that one.
oh, okay, got you. So
Yeah,
it goes out to them. Got you.
yeah, that's going to be distributed to I forget the exact number, but over 1 million of those are going to be distributed to all of our people on the org chart for Press Pass Season 1 at full
Right,
wrap,
right.
according to the predetermined breakdown. And all of this the consumer knows ahead of time. So what we're offering is a model that says through franchise is yours forever. When you make a film or a show out of that franchise, you're going to sell 10% ownership of that film or show to your audience to greenlight it.
That's
If you
amazing.
click on the version, the 0.0091, I think it's like $12, right?
Right.
So I'm selling 530,000 pieces of art for $12 each. All 530,000 of those pieces of art share the same serial number on the blockchain. So there's 530,000 editions of that serial number, and each edition of that serial number carries that percentage of ownership assignment in the show, which guarantees specific rights of interaction in the deed of assignment to the show, which is also right there in the collection, which the consumer can read. So the meme itself, you know what? It's best to just throw yourself into the immersion. I put an immersive gallery together instead of because I got sick of explaining it because people keep
Okay.
thinking the show's gonna
I was going to say
look
maybe
like
we'll
that.
play this quick 30-second commercial for everybody. It's an interesting piece, I think.
That's
Give them
and then we
give them
can
a
talk about the
snippet.
photography and then wrap.
Yeah,
It's a
that
perfect
sounds good,
segue.
right? It segues right into photography, and I love how you've used little bits of your photography in the LMO project too. So definitely wanted to ask you about that. But yeah, let's listen to. So first, it's the actor, right, and then it cuts to you, right, Kimani? And this
This
actor looks like
performer's
so
just
much like a
playing
young
me in
version
the
of you. It's not even funny.
Yeah, he does, but he's just performing me in this clip. He's not going to perform me on the actual show.
Right. Okay.
Fast forwards to literally my actual moment. That's my actual moment of retirement from professional basketball, limited to press. I'll work for players and agencies, but I won't work for the press anymore.
All right.
I'm Kimani Okearah with Hardcastle.net, and I'm very excited to be covering professional basketball for the first time in my photojournalist career.
Welcome to Lens Face. I'm your host, Kimani Okearah, and I am done with this shit. Bye. I'm done with this shit. Bye. Like, I love it. People, because that helps the show tremendously, especially if that little picture goes crazy. So if you're getting trolled in an internet conversation, please use my face with that subtitle, "I'm done with this shit, bye," to exit that conversation. And if that just becomes the way that people exit troll conversations online, the show is going to get made.
Hey,
Watch.
let's go.
I'm telling you, people will automatically associate that with power to leave a The production quality of the clip reflects the reference to this 5-year project that I did. It's a performance art project called #LensFace, where I just like, yeah, you got to think, like, I put my hopes and dreams into this situation, right? And it
Right.
wasn't going well. And the team was no good. The media relations started getting real goofy in 2015. So a year later, I decided to start producing this show called #LensFace, where I was going to make fun of a few different things. One was the self-importance of sports media personalities, because this whole time I'm over here being like, these guys are just playing ball in a cup. Like, it's fancy, but like there's a huge, massive ecosystem around grown men playing ball in a cup, and I find that hilarious. So, so that was never lost. And I play basketball, so that was so, like, don't get me wrong, I love the game, but that was still never lost on me that this massive ecosystem was built around this thing, and then we were just shoved into the corner of it, off in Sacramento around a team that was no good. And so no matter what content quality we would put out, because a lot of my photos are really high level, nobody cares because
Right.
you're affiliated with the brand rather than your own work. And I found that to be so funny that I decided to make work that was affiliated with the brand.
I like it, man. I think you're onto
You know,
something. It's amazing. I can't wait to see where it goes, and I'm down for the ride.
but
We'll see how Press Pass takes off, man. I wish you the best. Everybody go check it out. You got a few really low hanging NFTs that are available for less than $20 if you're interested, and believe in this awesome on-chain vision for film production, and really even just IP rights in general. It's really awesome what LMO's been pulling together. You got some devs who see your value building this greenlit protocol. I'm looking forward to hearing more about that. But thank you, man. It's really amazing. So before we wrap, I would love to just hear a little bit about your creative side on the artistic mints that you've put up, specifically amazing photography. And you got some one-of-one black and white NBA shots. So maybe just tell the listeners how you managed to take these amazing photographs in the NBA. I know you've mentioned you were basically a photographer for the Sacramento Kings, and that was an interesting role for you. But you snapped some amazing photos, and there's a lot of photography pros, making pretty good money in the NFT space. It's not as huge as we're hoping it's going to be one day. But you've got a real resume behind you, and these are some amazing shots of, top class or, stars of the NBA, basically. So I can imagine they will eventually catch on and sell, and you can have a really cool NFT kind of community in your own right, just on your photography, putting aside all the production. So what are you doing with that, and how are you planning to kind of do that side of your NFT career?
I have so many archive shots, and I have a different mentality about the way that I shoot, because I shoot for the story. That's we're all we're all in cinema, and that's at the end of the day my responsibility is to tell the story. So there's a shot there, brothers, at 7.04 Ethereum, which is much higher than all the other listed pieces, because one of my favorite shots of all time. That's Seth Curry's very first moment playing a real game against Steph Curry on January 9th, 2016.
That's amazing,
now I have
man.
The very first, the moment that Seth checked into the game, you can see Steph has a little smile on his face because he knows he's about to bust his ass, and he did. He did. And I have and Seth Curry and I go back even beyond that, because I went to UC Santa Cruz, and Seth Curry played for the Santa Cruz Warriors. So I had already graduated, and I was visiting some friends in Santa Cruz one time from LA, because I was producing at the Young Turks. And I was up in Santa Cruz, and we were at Taco Bell at 3 a.m, 2013. And Seth Curry and Dwayne Dedman, two guys who are actively in the NBA now, they were playing for the Santa Cruz Warriors, the D League team.
Wow.
And so I recognize him. I know hoopers. And I go, my buddy, he's really drunk, and he's losing. He's
3 in the morning,
God,
so yeah.
I'm like, dude, you go outside. And then I sat down at their table. We're all eating the burritos and everything. And as soon as I'm like, hey, I shoot NBA, I work up in Sacramento, they're comfortable with me. Incidentally, both players came through Sacramento. I got a year with them both. Nice. So that was interesting. But Seth, him and I had a great conversation in that moment. I was like, yeah, dude, because they weren't in the NBA yet, and right. They were young. They're younger. Dwayne is my age, and then Seth is a little younger than me. Actually, they might both be my age. Let me not. But anyway, if Seth is younger than me, it's only by a year, so don't take that for a grain of salt. But I was just encouraging. I'm like, I'm not anybody. I just take photos. I don't get paid anything to do it. But I'll tell you, I think you guys are both going to be in the league soon. And then they were. Nice. Not that I had anything to do with that,
but
hey,
you have that good story now. That's amazing. Yeah. And then to come around full circle and capture this amazing moment with these two brothers, I can see why you put it at 7 Ethereum, man. That's really, really cool. Did anyone else capture that moment? So this was their first time in the NBA on court together?
Seth played against Steph in a preseason moment when he was on the Orlando Magic's preseason roster the year before. Okay. But this is their first regular season moment, and
there you go.
You ask me about the NBA, preseason doesn't count.
Man, that smile on Seth Curry's face, man, on Curry's face says everything, bro. That's amazing.
That's just and then there's another shot in there with Rajon Rondo in the year that he led the league in assists, and so I tried to capture that the essence of a player leading the league in assists in a photo, and I think I did a wonderful job on that one. And there's another shot of LeBron that was
Oh,
collected at our. I did
yeah,
it
that was
early
a really
adopting
nice
there.
shot. That was really nice.
Yeah, because I shoot everything manual focus. People don't understand. I shoot on a 1968 200 millimeter Nikkor lens. It's my main go-to. It's my sniper. Well, I did an early adopter thing when I first minted them, where I had .07 on the first 10 shots,
Mhm.
and yeah, but that's manual focus, and so catching the ball mid-flight in a pass from Braun like that, I'm just I'm not gonna pat myself on the back because
No, you have a right to
a
be
lot of
proud of
my
that,
actual
man. It's a
work is
very
great.
nice shot. Like, I'm surprised you haven't, mass
No
like
problem.
sold that out to like Sports Illustrated or something.
Well,
It's a
now I'm saying you guys come to me, go buy my NFTs, and then you have the non-commercial, and then if there's anything to work out commercially past that, I'm at 35%. All of that spelled out in the NFT. So
That's amazing, man. Well done.
isn't that great? Like I already have everything. If somebody wants to get involved in the shot, they know exactly what's about to happen, and they know the baseline price for the non-commercial. And when you grab the non-commercial, you also have the ability to negotiate commercial deals. But I want my 35%. I
Yeah,
suffered
yeah.
greatly. I did 10 years just for rights, so I got to maximize the value
Oh
of
man,
that.
for sure.
And
You don't need to explain yourself.
yeah, that
You're
that
good.
so, but that Steph Curry is the 0.75 Steph Curry. That was from his championship run in 2016. Babyfaced assassin Steph. It's on there somewhere. That's a steal. That's an absolute. That one right there. He's talking to the ref.
Hmm.
Um,
Oh,
that's
this
an
one here.
absolute
Oh yeah,
steal.
yeah, yeah. No doubt.
And then I got a really art house look at Klay Thompson shooting a 3-pointer. So oh, and there's a Kobe. Put a Kobe up in that collection. And there's another Kobe, a composite shot that I did of 2 shots that I took of him, where I put him across from himself, and where the title is "I am my only competition."
No
But some of the
doubt.
shots that I've listed up there are for Sports Illustrated and Nike and those sorts of things. So you're going to see some pretty wild prices on that are not accessible to standard
Yeah,
collectors.
that's all right.
But
That's good, man. This is like nobody else can get this shot. It was a once in a, it's like,
nobody,
and especially now
nobody
with
has
Kobe
that.
Bryant.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like that's that.
that's an awesome Bryant
So
shot.
yeah, I want Boogie to get that. I hope he does.
No doubt.
He likes the shot, but I'm not. See, my problem is that the ballers don't want to pay money for their own shots. But I'm like, yo, I made zero money covering y'all.
Hook a brother up, man. Come on. That's what this is about.
Basically
That's
the
what the
way.
NFTs. That's what the NFTs allow. This is the new creator economy. Allowing people to really get that compensation they deserve. You get a nice one-of-one NFT, and like he said, non-commercial rights to the image. And if you want to use it commercially, there you go. You got options. You just
Also
gonna have to
came
pay
up with a derivative
35%.
thing that's fully compliant with all respective parties. So if you grabbed one of these shots and did a full face replacement and made sure that all branding and trademarks were scrubbed, you could offer it as a derivative. But I want to set up some sort of approval system there because I just don't want anything being made out of these.
Yeah.
Like I don't like, for example, that Steph Curry, I would like if he collected it and put his ape on his own face, I can't stop him from doing that.
Right.
But I have a feeling about replacing people of certain visual appearance with monkeys. So
No,
we
I
know
don't
what I'm
think
saying? Like,
derivatives of photography should not be a common trend. I don't think, especially when the photographer specifically clearly does not want that. That's not being created for that intention, right? If it's stated clearly on it, then maybe. But I don't think derivatives of photography is something we need to do or expect in the
right.
space. But awesome,
Although I
man.
do think it'd be funny to have like somebody go through this entire collection and replace each of these players' heads with Muppet faces and do a really good job. That'd be hilarious.
That
Like
would be
that's
that
you
would be
know that
something.
that sort of thing would be. I could be talked into that, but yeah, that Rajon Rondo piece. That one is the one where he led the league in assists that season. It's a real funny story of how he was even signed to Sacramento to begin with. He's only signed here because he could lead the league in assists. Uh,
There you
no,
go.
he wasn't going to get the playing time to do it anywhere else at that point in his career. So, but yeah, that's how I shoot. I always think about like what the moment is. This collection has interesting utility. The reason I haven't released all 90, there's going to hard cap at 90 pieces, but I want to curate the rest of the collection with the holders. So once we reach the first 5 holders, Those 5 holders will be invited on a call to help me curate the next 5 pieces because I have thousands of shots and I honestly don't know where to go.
You need some photography NFT whales to come find your collection, man. Because I would think if you love basketball and if you love photography and if you happen to have a good amount of Ethereum and you're building your collection, there's no way you don't want at least 1 or 2 of these pieces from Kimani. So putting that out there, check it out. That's Okearah, BNW, Kimani Okearah, Okearah. Thank you so much, Kimani. I mean, that's very impressive. Outside of the production stuff, you got your amazing photography. I really do definitely believe in the historical kind of relevance of what you're doing with the LMO structure, and the fact that you've got some devs already aligned with you and working on the protocol is huge. So really just excited to hear that, and do definitely let us know when that greenlit protocol is live. I'd love to have you and those devs back on the show, and really be able to look under the hood and talk about, you know, what the ramifications are for that going forward. But yeah, with that, usually final question we always ask is, what's your advice to those people that are out there, maybe from the film production side, but in general, you know, who are not really understanding the gravity of the blockchain space, and maybe are a little skeptical listening to the FUD? You know, what do you like to say to those folks out there? Understanding, you know, it's not our job to convince them, but if there was kind of a clear-cut, concise reason to jump into this Web3 creator economy, what do you think it should be?
You're helping establish universal basic income for the work that you do.
Nice.
So that's like you're establishing residuals, especially if you're in the creative economy. We are building infrastructure to where residuals will be just a understood thing about the economy, same way as email is. And I can't wait for that day. My other one is this, right? I came in, we put together our project team in March of 2021, early March. We launched our writers room and our collective process. We minted our tokens March 24th. We've had maybe 30 or so collectors in season 1 of Press Pass. Most people collect 1 edition. Some people have collected multiple. And we have 48 or so company ownership token collectors. Most people have collected 1 or 2. We've had 1 person that has graduated to the next level of the top brass out. We have not gone viral. We have not experienced the sort of community reflection of value that we think that we should have experienced, but we're not entitled to that either.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're out there listening to this, we've been out here for 16, 17 months. So not only if you want to help us keep things going, please collect. But even on top of that, it doesn't happen overnight. That's my other thing on this. It's like some people, you see it, you're like, that person was here for 2 weeks and pull out their project.
Now they're a millionaire. What the heck?
It is crazy.
Yeah.
And you know, and you're like, what am I doing wrong? What am I doing wrong? That's not the right answer. The answer for me, the answer of what I was doing wrong is I fell off of the original community that I came in with. And that's not my fault necessarily, because I lost 7 people. Okay, April of 2021, my brother passed. We lost 6 more people from April 2021 to April 2022. Aunties, uncles, my grandmother, my birth mother.
Really sorry.
So it was
Condolences, man. Condolences.
Yeah.
That's tough.
So when I had to take myself off of talking about our comedic, fictional basketball story world on social media, because my family's going through it and they can't be seeing me talk about, you know, that stuff when we're all going through some really heavy stuff. So you have like people that are thinking, oh, you know, they were uncollected for a year. No, I was literally taken off the market by tragedy and in a position to where I could not market. And I'm not just to the point where I didn't want to market, but it's just like you can't without insulting your family.
I was going to say, you know, I think it's okay that it's not the type of project that maybe flippers, you know, people are going to be looking at the market and like how much buying and selling is happening with the tokens. Like it's about believing in the technology, believing in the vision of the Press Pass, LMO Productions, and wanting to be a part of it, you know, and that's a long haul thing, right? So to your point about people maybe obsessing over the amount of time that it's been on market or why hasn't it sold here and there and all that kind of stuff. Like, I really feel like those type of criticisms, though they can be valid from a purely financial perspective, are not necessarily, you know, aligned with what you're trying to build, you know?
Right.
So it's all good, but that's a good point. Take your time, be patient. Overnight success doesn't come for most people. 95%, 98% of the people in this space are just out there plugging away, promoting their art, selling their art, just like any other artist out there. But the advantage is this is a global community. It's borderless. You got peer-to-peer transactions. You've got middle people being cut out. You know, you're getting the lion's share of your percentage of the sale, 90, 95%, whatever it might be, outside of the platform's little cut. So that is the advantage here. And that's why we're doing this every week on Web3 Warriors. And we talk to creators like Kimani here and other people in this Web3 space that are building out and creating this economy for all of us. It's an amazing global space. And thank you again, Kimani, for bringing this technology forward. Your structure and your kind of vision around production and film in this blockchain space. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, David. And thank you to all of the Web3 Warrior listeners for giving me your time. I'm so grateful you exist. If it's not taking food off your table, to support what we're doing to Let Me Out Productions. If you're a creator, support grab a company ownership token. We're a development and service studio that's here for you. And if you're an audience member that wants to support a 20% net profit share and establishing that as infrastructure in the showbiz industry, grab as many tokens and press pass as you can. And thank you for listening. I appreciate everybody.
Let's go. Thank you so much, Kimani. And I love your slogan, "You deserve to exist." That goes out to everybody. We all deserve to exist. Let's enjoy our life. And until next week, we'll be back live with the Web3 Warriors. And until then, catch you in the metaverse. Peace out.
All right, y'all. Have a good one.